and I'm still catching up with producers and growers here today at the Taste of Cavan. And with me now is Eugene Kiernan, and Eugene is Breffni mushrooms.
Yes, from Kilnaleck in Cavan.
Kilnaleck in County Cavan. I'm tasting your produce all day. Absolutely wonderful. The big
breakfast flats, yes.
Breakfast
Flat
flats. Oh,
stuffed,
got a
yeah.
nice name. For stuffed mushrooms, absolutely wonderful. And I'd like to say, folks, that you can get them in Dunn stores.
Yes.
So to get back to the days of the mushrooms, I remember when my dad started mushrooms, one of the first growers in County Cavan, along with Tim Connolly. Button mushrooms were the things. You had to go little white, closed cup button mushrooms. You had to grow them like that.
Yeah, that was back in the early 80s.
That's exactly when it was.
And ironically, there was 700 growers in Ireland at that stage. Now there's about 60. And I think there's more mushrooms we produce today than there was then. Back then, we were growing on phase 2 compost. Now we're growing phase 3, and we're growing on shelves. Back then, it was bags. It was very labour intensive, you know.
Very labour intensive.
Very.
It was a horrible job picking mushrooms because you were in such a heat. The humidity was very high, and they were just there.
Well, today it's slightly different. The picking conditions are, it's 17.5 degrees, humidity is 86%, CO2 is 1500. Conditions are ideal. In fact, they're better than office conditions. And there's no straining. Now there's no strain in the back.
I remember in our days, Dad was always forever trying to invent things to make little pushes and trolleys and little stools and things to make anything to make it handier for them to push the crates along the ground. But anyway, to get back, what's your story now of getting into mushrooms? Were you part of the Monaghan mushroom group as well?
Yeah, I was back then in the early 80s. We would have been, and then we got too big for Monaghan mushrooms at the time, and we ventured out in our own markets in the UK. We built our own compost yard then, Foxfield mushrooms. And I suppose, like repeating what's happening now, the exchange rate went against us. Only back then we didn't know what was happening. We hadn't hedged our exposure, or Today, sterling is at, well, we used to say it's 0.92 is the exchange rate. So it takes 92 pence sterling to buy a euro. But back in the late 80s...
There's talk of it going to be on a par, and sure.
Yeah, but back in the late 80s, it went from 0.84 to 112. So it took 112 sterling to buy an Irish pound then. So I wouldn't be surprised about parity in the near future,
So how has the game of growing mushrooms come along since those days? Because if I remember anything rightly, you could lose a whole crop if something went wrong.
Yes, you could.
Is it still as temptuous as that?
It's not as sensitive today because the growing rooms are controlled by computer. So back then it was a panel, it was probably semi-automatic. Now it's fully automated. Back then it was very labour intensive. Today it's bulk compost, not near as intensive in labour. We, for example, we have 3 farms in Ireland, we have 1 in Scotland, we have about 300 people employed. I'd say 95% of them are foreign national. The Irish, we can't source labour, local labour. So we have to go to Eastern Europe and
that's amazing.
In fact, Thailand and China and different places too, because Eastern Europe dried up with labour.
Yeah.
And but they're very happy to come here, work, and they think the wages is good and conditions are pretty good,
Okay. So mushrooms, and I'm glad to see now that you've done many things with mushrooms, and I like the last 2 previous people I've been speaking to, they've seen evolutions of their products, like Áine and Anne and her chocolate, Áine's chocolates, evolutions, and Dramilli box tea. We saw from it was just a boxy product, box tea, plain, simple box tea, having many uses and being put into many different ways. And the same with the mushrooms. You're using all shapes and cuts and sizes of mushrooms now.
Yeah, I suppose mushrooms is a commodity. So if we remained without evolving, we'd be extinct. We'd be gone out of the market. The present customer requires a change, a new of new tastes, of new, just love
New ideas,
new presentations.
And it can sometimes bring back a jaded old recipe if you just add something new to the mix, and it just says, wow, why didn't I think of this before, you know?
Absolutely. Value added is one of the niche words at the moment for the survival of a product. And probably that's what we have done with the stuffed mushroom, and we have we market some shiitake, we grow chestnut mushrooms, we grow breakfast flats.
Yeah, they're lovely.
Just depending on customer requirements.
So there's no time soon where people are going to get tired of mushrooms?
Well, mushrooms are an unbelievable, they're a fabulous food, and the medicinal qualities of mushrooms is unknown. In fact, you have to go back about 1,000 years. The Chinese and they knew the value of mushrooms for all sorts of cures, and they're just fascinating. Like, if you go into a forest, the bed of a forest is covered in mycelium. You wonder why mushrooms grow, they suddenly spring up, but they'll not grow without mycelium. But the mycelium is there if the growth conditions are right, which it does occasionally come October, and a lovely moist, covered in mushrooms. Yeah.
Okay. Some of them even magic. But you have a great stand down there, and it's one of the most popular stands here today.
It is indeed,
Every time you put down a plate of your product, it just disappears within seconds, and well done. It's great to see a company like yourself growing from the very start to being a big production, and that's actually what you have done.
Well, it's a local produce, and it employs a lot of local labour, and it adds to the local economy. I'm saying, Áine, we market 95% of our product in the UK. Now, with Brexit pending,
the big word, the dirty word this weekend is Brexit, isn't it?
And it is going to have an effect on a lot of food producers.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, we spoke about it a year ago, and to be honest, today we don't know any. We're not better informed today than we were a year ago. And now we have Boris Johnson in charge, and I fear for the worst, because I believe personally that he's a bluffer, talking about leaving without a
backstop,
without an agreement, without a deal. That's
ridiculous,
lunacy.
Yeah. And we wouldn't like to get, I'm sure you remember the border as much as I do.
Oh, God bless us.
We wouldn't want to get back to those days where you crossed the border. I know there was fun times with smuggling butter and things like that, and probably we would have been smuggling mushrooms if there was anything to be made on it as well.
Well, there were at that time,
was like the abuse you used to get when you'd be crossing the border, and the fear you had of crossing the border as well, especially with the soldiers around.
I remember it. Well, you had 3,500 people lost their lives because of troubles in the north of Ireland. And the border.
Most of them civilians.
Well, the majority of them are civilians. And I remember, as you do, crossing the border, and to be honest, you'd have a knot in your stomach.
Absolutely.
It was such relief to get to this side of the border.
Yeah, I used to hate driving a car down there with a southern red.
And you could, absolutely, and you being in the wrong place at the wrong time, you just could be a victim, another statistic.
We certainly don't want to go back to that. And then there's all media is putting out a lot of fear there as well, saying, if we drive down the north, we mightn't be insured. If we have an accident, what happens? And none of us think anything of getting in the car and go down, pop down Enniskillen or nothing. We don't think anything of it nowadays, but I think that could be all stopped.
But for economic reasons, I think the victim in the whole Brexit saga will be Northern Ireland. And they have the potential to be the forgotten people, the big losers. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of great businessmen in the north, and religion does not come into it in my book. I think it's pounds in your pocket or money in your pocket, and it's livelihood for your family, regardless what denomination you are.
Absolutely.
And I do believe that a lot of these businessmen will stand up and be counted very soon.
Yeah, they'll have to.
And I do not think that it doesn't matter what religion you are, we come into it. It'll be for economic reasons that will decide the future.
So have you any big plans for Breffni mushrooms at the moment? Any further markets? Doing anything different?
We are, fortunately...
Strategy, you always have to be ahead.
We have a farm in Scotland between Edinburgh and Glasgow and Stirling. And we have a pack house there. And with Brexit, we see the potential for that to double in size. And that's what we're planning at this moment.
Okay.
because a lot of the retailers in the UK, they're demanding at this moment UK mushrooms. Now the UK fortunately is only 40% supplied in mushrooms, self-sufficient, so they have to get them somewhere. So we feel that we're well placed to satisfy their demand, you know.
That's good.
But,
well done to Breffni Mushrooms, and congratulations on your stall. It's really popular there today and very savoury. What do you call them again, those flat?
Breakfast flat, stuffed breakfast flat mushrooms.
Breakfast flat mushrooms. Yeah. Well, I am going to get some of those in Dunn stores on the way home. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for talking to us, Eugene, and telling us the story of Breffni Mushrooms and continued success to
Lovely,
Breffni
Áine.
Mushrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely.